All right, guys. So today we're going to take a short break from React today and tomorrow. We're going to be focusing back on our old friend Django. So our goal over the next couple of days is to learn how to create an API project using Django and how that'll work with our full stack application once we are tying everything together. So today we're going to be, again, covering Django. We're going to be learning a couple new things, namely using serializers and briefly talk about model forms. But for the most part, it's going to be a large review from everything we've done, honestly, from maybe like the last 9 or 10 weeks. So a lot of topics from each week, or at least one topic from each week will probably be hit. So definitely going to be using Python and JavaScript. OOP doesn't go away. So we're going to see a lot of OOP in our code. We'll see maybe a little bit of, algorithms or, data structures. We might see regex somewhere, HTML when we're doing the front end. But yeah, basically each week. So we have databases, data modeling will be part of this. So again, a huge review. So we got a lot to get through today, but hopefully most of it should be familiar or at least somewhat understandable of what we're doing with Django. All right, so let's kind of just get into coding. No lecture slides today. We're just going to create a Django API project or an API application in Django and kind of see how we can develop that and test it with some applications. All right, let's just get into it. So I have created a blank workspace in Visual Studio Code. Just gonna go through all of our motions and then get this project off the ground. So I've named my project Netflix API. That's sort of what we're going to be creating today. So I'm going to go through our usual steps. And hopefully all of this is familiar. So I want to do Python, make a virtual environment. Hopefully we didn't forget about doing that. So I'm going to make my virtual environment. Step 1, get into it. This is step 2. All right, so I'm in my virtual environment. We're going to install a few items. I'm going to install Django, of course. So do a pip install Django. And then I also want to install psycopg too, because I'm going to be using Postgres with my project here. So I'll install both together. Give that a run. Hopefully that'll be done in a few seconds. As always, make sure you definitely want to encourage you guys to ask any questions along the way. Again, so this is meant to be a good, solid review. And if anything's still kind of familiar, like, hey, why are we doing that? Please, please, please stop me and ask at any point. All right, so we got Django and psycopg. Probably a good time to do a pip freeze. We want to make sure we lock in those versions into a file so that if we share this project with anyone else, we can't talk and type at the same time. Requirements.txt. All right, so again, pip freeze should create a new file. If you do the angle bracket in the file name, and it's going to kind of just show all the versions of the libraries that you're using for this project. Nothing too fancy going on there. Probably also want to create a get ignore file. So I'm going to do echo.venv. Echo basically just going to print this back onto the screen. But if I want to capture that output into a file, I can just do the angle bracket get ignore. And that should create a new get ignore file with my virtual environment folder named in there. So that's kind of a good terminal way to create your get ignore if it's going to be really simple. All right, cool. So get ignore is done. Requirements.txt is done. That's all the boring stuff. Let's get our Django project off the ground. So I need to create my Django project running Django admin. Start project, one word. I'm going to call this project Netflix. And I don't want nested folders. So I'm going to put that period, space period after my folder name and hit enter. All right, so after running that Django admin command, we should have gotten a new project folder. And I actually want to delete that because I forgot my naming conventions. So sorry, I usually like to append _proj to my folder. So that's personal preference. So I'm going to do that because it makes my life much easier. Put that in here. Oops, I need to delete manage.py again. All right, sorry. So ignore the last 20 seconds. I want to create a new project, call it Netflix _proj, and enter. All right, there we go. So there's my project folder. We also got manage.py, which is that main file that we use pretty much for everything from here on out. so I'm going to run create an app now. So I'm going to run Python manage.py, and my app will be called Netflix_app. And I forgot my Django command. It's been a while. We're going to do start app and then the app name. Sorry about that. All right, so Python manage.py start app and then the app name. That would make more sense. All right, so there's my app folder over here, project folder. We're good to go. Next thing I want to do is create the database I'll be using for this project. So I'm going to create a Postgres database by running create db and call that Netflix_db. All right, small note, you don't have to use Postgres a lot of the times. Sometimes it is required. I know like when we used to deploy to Heroku didn't support SQLite, but it did support Postgres. So depending on where you're deploying, the type of database can matter. But I just use Postgres because we've learned about it. It is, used across industry. I believe Yellow yesterday mentioned they use Postgres. So, or someone mentioned they use Postgres. So it is a widely used database engine. All right, so we got our database. That's all the
for our personal project, do we have to use Postgres or can we choose a different database if we wish?
Likely Postgres, but if you have a reason to use something else, we can discuss it. Yep. Okay, so now that all my terminal commands are done, I'm going to go into my project folder, find that settings.py file, and there's a couple things we need to edit in here. So again, hopefully we didn't forget all the Djangoisms. We need to go to the installed apps list and add in our app name. So my app name was Netflix_app. All right, so add my app name. That is one of two things I need to do here. Scrolling down further, I want to use a Postgres database. So I'm going to need to change the database section. I need to change SQLite to be PostgreSQL. And then I need to tell it which database to use. In this case, I just created a database called Netflix_db. All right, so again, we've done this before, nothing too exciting just yet, but that is all the settings I need to set. So that's done. At this point, I think we could run our server. So if I just did a Python manage.py run server, should be able to pop that up. All right, so I have unapplied migrations. I'll need to handle that. Ports in use, that is, again, not what I want here. I have like 5 VS codes open, so I need to figure out which one is. All right, I think I got the one that was taking up my ports. Let's try that again. I want to use ports. All right, there we go. So 8000 is default Django port. So if I have a window over here, I go to locals 8000. Great. If you see this flying rocket ship, that means your project has been set up correctly. All right. Any questions from our initial steps there? Again, all that should have been reviewed, but if anything popped up, Yulin?
I have a question about the migration part.
Sure.
So whenever you start run a server and you see all those red alerts, and it's always better to migrate before you create your model, or you can always migrate after all your models being set up?
Yeah, good question. I leave it up to developer choice. In this case, yeah, I don't like seeing these messages. So you can do initial migrate to get all the Django stuff that Django wants in your database. And then, yeah, when you create your models, do another migrate. That's totally fine. In this case, I just wanted to combine steps. So yeah, I would say most of the time I probably run a migrate right off the bat just to kind of not have to see this error message or warning message. Was there another hand raised, Courtney?
Yeah, I was just wanting to verify that Control-C, is that the only way to close like the server or the port, I guess?
You can also trash the terminal. So if you hit the X, that means it's still going to be running. If you trash it, it's actually going to trash the application, whatever is running. So you could trash the terminal, or yeah, Control-C would be the only two ways that I know how to kind of get that killed. You could probably go through your process explorer and kill it manually too. Okay, so our project is set up here. We haven't done anything new yet, but let's go to actually adding some relevant data here. So don't care about my terminal at this point. All right, so let's take some notes quickly just to highlight what we're doing today versus what we've done in the past. It's going to be mostly similar, as I mentioned, but slightly different. So in the past, when we've been creating Django apps, our past process has kind of been like working with models. Python file. Okay, so we've been working, our process, usually my process is work on models first, and then we do view handlers, and then we usually do, say, templates. So there's 4 pieces that we usually need to develop, which we've done in the past. So we worked on models, then views, and then HTML templates, and then finally did our routing with our URLs. These were the 4 main building blocks of our Django project, right? So if we remember what all these do, this is our data modeling portion / database interaction. Views, these are central processing of requests and responding. HTML templates, this is just our visual presentation. So visual presentation of data. And URLs was how requests are. All right, so again, these were our 4 main pieces when we were creating full stack Django apps. The difference today is one of these is going to go away. We're still going to have models. We still need to have some interaction with our database and representation of data internally. So I guess that's also what this is for. Internal data representation. Okay, views, that's still, that's our central, again, processing portion. That does not go away. URLs, we're still going to have routing, right? Client's going to make a request to some URL. Django is going to receive that request and decide where to route that based on the URL that was requested. The piece that's going to go away is HTML templates. We are no longer going to be developing front-end portions in Django. We're just creating an API. So again, API stands for Application Programming Interface. It is purely meant to be an application that serves up data. No HTML pages, no visual presentation of the data, just kind of a raw formed data for anyone that wants to have access to that data. So in this case, we're going to get rid of HTML templates, but we're going to add a new kid on the block, and that is going to be serializers. Serializers. All right, so this is going to be our main new topic for today that we're adding into our Django project. So serializers, simply put, are let's say how we package up internal data for external. All right, so maybe that's the best note here, but the idea of serializers is we're going to create some objects that will be able to take our internal data, so in this case, our model records, convert them into a transmittable format. So I guess that's not something I added here, but transmittable format basically just means some generic format that basically all applications can understand. In this case, we're going to be converting to JSON. Other possible formats are XML, I guess YAML could be a format. Not sure if that's very popular, but JSON is a very popular kind of agreed upon language or representation of data that we can send JSON to somewhere else, and the application is going to know how to convert that JSON to its internal data representation. So what I mean by that, in Python, right, we have dictionaries, we have lists, we have other data types. In JavaScript, those data types might be a little different, but there's some agreed upon like translation between a Python dictionary and a JavaScript object. Those are very similar, but they are different. So we can't just say, hey, here's a Python dictionary, JavaScript application, go do something with it. That's not how it works. Also, it's not easy to transmit complex data types over the web. So JSON is a string-based format to represent data from applications. Again, it's just a very simplified way to, again, convert internal data into some transmittable format. So if you go on our curriculum page, we have a link to JSON. I'm sure you could Google it. So we don't want to do that. But yeah, we have a link to JSON somewhere, I think in our serializers. So we'll talk about that in a second. But that is what the job of serializer is going to be. just convert data back and forth between JSON and our internal data to JSON. Any questions on that kind of high level introduction to serializers? Okay, so this is the order that I like to proceed with. Again, you don't have to go in this order. You can start at URLs if you want to. But I always like starting with models. What my application is going to store, how the data is going to be structured, how the data is going to be related to one another. So let's start with models. So I'm going to go to my application, find models.py. Let's start creating our models here. So again, our application today is going to be a Netflix API. Specifically, it's going to be a Netflix reviews API. So that is what we're going to try to represent in our models here. So again, a lot of this code is presented on our curriculum page. So if you want to kind of copy and paste it, I probably will do half and half. I might kind of sneak in some code by copying and pasting it. Otherwise, I'm going to try typing a lot of it out just because I feel it's a better review and gives us kind of more time to digest what's going on. All right, so first thing is we want to start with our models. What type of models do we want to have? I've kind of thought about this ahead of time, so I kind of know which models I want. There are 4 models that I want in my project. One is a model of category. So we're going to have a bunch of like media, like TV shows and movies. What type of product do we have? So I'm going to call this category. We need to inherit from models.model. So again, this is a Django class that has all the functionality for models. We're simply inheriting from it. I'm going to add on whatever we need to for our specific model. So for my category model, I'm going to say I want to have a type field. That's going to be models.char field. So again, this is just going to be, hey, is it a movie? Is it a TV show? What is the actual verbal name of this category? So I'm going to do max length 64 is probably overkill, but we'll go with that. And then I'm going to create my $string method because if I don't do it now, I'll forget to do it later.
Hey, Ankur, I have a question.
Go for it.
So I always have trouble thinking about my like model and database like design ahead of time, like before I start my project. Do you have any tricks on, since you say that you prefer making your models first, of how you think about it and sort of how you come to like the database design?
Yeah, great question. It is definitely something that takes some time in terms of not practice makes perfect. It's more about just actual time sitting, sketching it out, using those database diagramming tools. Basically, you want to answer the questions, most of the questions ahead of time. What is your application going to do? So in this case, I'm not creating Netflix. Like I'm not, doing everything Netflix has to offer. But I want to know, again, I guess I haven't fully talked or discussed what I envision this application to be doing. But high level, this application is going to list a bunch of Netflix kind of movies and TV shows, show what categories they belong to. So again, are they a movie, TV show, specials? I don't know what other categories I might have. What genres encompass the media? So is it a comedy show? Is it a drama, a thriller? So I'm going to add some genres just to show that to the user. And then finally, I'm going to have a model for reviews. And that's kind of the main content. Products and reviews are going to be my main content in terms of I want users to be able to read reviews for people that have created the reviews for various shows and movies, and also add their own reviews to the site. So again, it's basically listing Netflix items and then showing user reviews. That's my kind of high level project. So based on that, I did take some time up front, which I didn't do here during lecture. But I just decided like, hey, what actual models do I need? How do I represent the data? And there's flexibility here. I actually went back and forth between a few design decisions. I could kind of talk about what I was thinking and why I kind of landed on this. But again, a lot of this should be familiar to how we do data modeling. But data modeling definitely takes some time. And there's no advice I have, I guess, short answer. It's just kind of figure out what you need and then try to do all of that ahead of time. Again, you can change it later on, but it usually is more work to change your core models later on. But yeah, thanks for that question. All right, so I have a really simple category model here. I'm going to create a genre model, which is going to be very similar. Again, these are going to be the genres like comedy, drama, sci-fi, whatever else you might think are popular genres or category like show types. So length. I am not typing as well. All right, 64. We'll go with that. 64 is a good number. We're going to have a tagline. So just kind of a fun little quip about the genre that we could display once we get to the front end. Again, we're not doing front end development today, but we are mindful of what our front end might look like in the back of our minds. Select that 255. And then another under string method, because we're going to be showing this data to some end user and they don't want to see something that's not helpful to them. So I'm going to return the genre and then self.type would be the type of genre that this is representing. All right, so that's two of my classes, two of my models. These aren't very interesting. I don't think if there's any questions on them, please ask, but I think we all should understand what those are doing. One of my main models is going to be something I'm going to call products. I don't know a good English word to describe like movies and TV shows. I was thinking like media, but I feel like media is kind of too abstract. So I landed with products. I don't know if anyone has a better name, let me know. I was blanking on that. But this is going to have a bunch of fields. So one is going to be the title of the product. Like, you know, one of my favorite TV shows from the 90s, Seinfeld, that'd be the title of this product. Char field. Max length equals 64. This is a time where I think I'm going to kind of copy some code just because one, I don't want to make typos, and two, it's probably not fun seeing me add all of these fields. So I'm going to drop a few fields in here and make sure we talk about them. So I have a title field, description of the product, which category it belongs to. Notice that this is a foreign key relationship. So that is something to highlight here. This means that this is a one-to-many relationship, meaning each product can have at most one category. So maybe add some comments here. One to many. Each product can have only one category. All right, so the many side is products. That's why we put the foreign key in the many model, which is the product model. On the other side, category is the one side, as in one category can have many products associated with it, right? Like the category of TV shows can have probably thousands, hundreds of thousands TV shows listed within one category. So that's why we created a foreign key relationship between the product model and the category model. So notice we say category as the model, on delete, what's our on delete method? Cascade is usually what we go with. Again, if you forget what that does, it's what's going to happen if we delete a particular category, what happens to the associated products? Cascade says just delete those products also. Don't keep them around because we don't want to have orphaned records. Related name, again, this is optional, but highly recommended. This is how you will refer to this relationship on the reverse side or the opposite side of this relationship. So if I have a product instance, I can just do, product whatever dot category will give me the category associated with. But what if I have a category instance? How do I refer to all the products that are associated with that one category? And this is the name of the field that kind of gets invisibly added here. So I just put this here. Again, this is not a field I will create. This will be created by this foreign key relationship and be called products because I've named it related name products. All right, Andrew Tran, question.
I think we talked about it before, but when you create that products, it doesn't actually have that products in your database, right?
Correct. This is not going to be a field in the category table. Yep, great question. Good to clarify. The database will not store this. Yep.
It's almost like a fake one stored in like Django.
Yep, it is Django being helpful for us. Yes, it is a fake database field. It does not exist in a database, but when Django's slurping up all the database records and we told it how these items are related, Django's be like, all right, cool, I'm gonna give you access to the from the reverse side in case you need it. So it's just kind of, it's definitely useful, and Django does the hard work for us between converting database data into our application data. All right, so that was a one-to-many. Now we're also gonna see an instance of a many-to-many relationship. And this is with genres. So one show can have multiple genres. I'm thinking, so there's one show that I used to watch on Netflix. They've been kind of on hiatus for a while. Show called Dead to Me. It's a comedy, but it's also a drama. So again, you're not always limited to one bucket. So in this case, it's a many because one show can have many genres it's a part of. and one genre can be associated with many different shows. All right, so that is why this is a many to many. So let's write that out. Each product can have many genres. And each genre can have many products. All right, so that's why it's a many. So we use the many to many field from the models module. We tie that with the genre model that we just created above. We also give that a related name. So again, same deal here with the related name with foreign key. We have this imaginary field called products now kind of accessible from any genre instance that gets created. Any questions on those relationships, why we are creating these types of relationships, or how we do that with Django? Okay. All right, so these are what my field's gonna look like. Again, title, description, category, genres, image URL, that's optional. If you wanna show some pictures on the front end, year release is more data. Is original is, for Netflix, they have the original shows. So I just wanna have a Boolean field. Verbose name is optional field that kind of dictates how this field is represented on the front end. So I don't want it to be called is original. I want it to be called Netflix original on the front end, but in my data, I want to just call it is original because that's more generic. Okay, so that's our third model. I'm going to add a method in here and a dunder string method as well. So I'm just going to copy this again, just to expedite things since we're chatting a lot. There's one more thing that I forgot to talk about. I have a validator here. In this case, year released. I want to make sure that, if I'm entering some show data, it's got to exist. You can't review a show that has not come out yet. So in this case, I'm limiting the date value to be at most today or prior to today. So I need to import max value validator. So I'm going to do that from Django. I forget where this is. Where is it? Core? I always forget this. So core.
Got validators.
Thank you. I forget that in the README or the curriculum page, but we have max value validator. Again, this is a built-in validator. Using that to make sure that our date value is not going to be in the future. So we got that. Date, I need to import the date module. So sorry for omitting this from the curriculum page, but always good. I think from dates, import dates. That's how I want to do it. Sorry, it's from date time. All right, so forgot to add these, my apologies, but we're importing a couple extra things. One is from Django core.validators, we want to use a built-in validator. And then from date time, we need the date module just to use with that validator. Okay, so that is a validator we're using for the year release field. Again, just to kind of incorporate some use of validators, just get a refresher there. All right. So I have this get average rating function. I'll comment that out for a second. We have one more model to go through, so I'm not gonna type that all out because I'll probably make a mistake. So let's get that from our curriculum page. If I can find that. All right, so rating is our last model, or not rating, review is our last model. All right, so this has something slightly new. I don't think we've done this too much before. You might have seen it in documentation. Maybe we've snuck it in before. But we're using choices. That's kind of a nice feature in Django. So our review model has a few fields. Products. Again, this is a foreign key relationship. So you can leave a review. A review is going to be associated with at most one product, so one TV show or movie. You can't review like a bunch of TV shows with one review. So this is a one-to-many relationship. But each product can have many different reviews that were written for it. So that is why we have a one-to-many here. We have a rating. So this rating is going to use this new nested class, which just has predefined rating values. The name does not matter at all. This is just for our developer use. Just if I want to identify what a 1 stands for, I could do rating.awful, and that's going to convert over to a 1. So again, these are just like variables. They're not going to matter to the end user at all, nor to our database. Our database is just going to store 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for the rating. So we create an integer field and tell it what choices are valid choices here. So only 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 are valid values for the rating. which would make sense. So it's kind of like validation, but not really. We're just limiting what values can be put in there. Username. So this is one thing we are not going to cover today. We are not doing authentication. We're not going to use a user model. So I've just simplified it to use a username. No one's going to be logging in. You're just going to type your username, make it up, and that's what we're going to store. Again, we don't want to make this tutorial too complicated. So authentication, hopefully you guys understand the principles of it. We'll definitely see more authentication. I think on Friday, we're going to do that with our new site. So stay tuned for that. But for our purposes today, we're just going to use a string field, char field for username. All right, and then finally, comments. If the user wants to add additional comments, they rated it a 2. We want to know why they rated it a 2. They can leave a comment, but that is going to be optional. So notice we have blank equals true, null equals true, meaning they can omit supplying a comment, and we're fine with that. Okay, cool. So again, a lot of model stuff that we went over. A lot of this should be reviewed, but again, look over the code on the curriculum page. Make sure you understand kind of how everything's working. Again, foreign keys, many fields. Anything else that might seem new, please ask about it. Andrew Tran.
Just a quick question. When you made that mini to many field in under product, you're creating another table in your database that we don't see here, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, good question. So the many to many, if you remember from our database SQL week, many to many relationships must be represented by a join table. In this case, I have not created a join model, right? So I have product as a model, genre as a model. They have a many to many relationship. I have not created a new model to represent that relationship. The many to many field takes care of that. On the back end, in the database, there will be a new join table created automatically. So again, Django's doing a lot of the hard work for us. So yes, Andrew, great comment. There's a join table behind the scenes, but there's no join model in Django for us. We can create it if we wanted to. In this case, not needed. Okay, so those are our 4 models. Spent some time on that. Jesse, go for it.
Yeah, my question is, so the second class under class review, sorry, the 4th review, second class rating, is that going to be also put into the database on Postgres?
Good question. Yeah. So again, this is sort of new usage we've not seen before. This is not going to be put in the database. This is not a model object. So notice we're not inheriting from model. So review is our model. Rating is just some other helper class that we've nested in here. I could have put this outside of here. It would have been fine. In this case, I would need to, I guess it would just work. But in this case, rating only applies to review. So just organizationally, it makes more sense to nest it within here. But yeah, it's just another helper class that's defining, all it's doing is defining some values for us in a sensible way. Again, we could create just global values and say, awful rating value equals 1. We create 5 global variables and use that with choices here. But again, the Django way is slightly cleaner and easier. We just create a class, define values in it, and then pass those choices to the choices attributes or property for models. Yeah, but yeah, these will not be in the database. That's just for our application. Good question though. Glad you guys are asking questions here. All right, one additional thing I want to do here, and this does not change my model in any way. I'm not adding new data, but I'm going to create a new field in my product model. So I've copied this from the curriculum page, again, just to expedite things. But I've decided to create a kind of helper model method called getAverageRating. So again, this is not a value that is directly stored in the product model in the database. This is just something I'm going to compute because I want access to it maybe later on. If I have a particular product, I want to know the average rating it had. I can probably do that with doing Django queries all the time, but I just want to centralize that in a function. So here we simply call the review model. We filter on. I don't want to do this. It's actually the right way to do it. I'm just realizing this is not the best way to do it, but it will accomplish the task. So we're going to query the review model, filter on the product equaling self. So remember, self is a reference to the instance of the product. We're saying every product from the reviews query set that matches itself. So the product field needs to refer to the product instance that we're looking for. We're going to filter all those objects, and we're going to get all the reviews for the current product. Assuming that we have more than one review, we'll compute the average by doing some fancy Django queries. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on Django queries, but you guys can do some Googling. You can do a dot aggregate, do a models.average, specify the field you want to average, and do some other math stuff here. So again, this should spit out something like 3.85 would be the average example. But yeah, I think the better way to do this is we should have access to self.reviews. I'm gonna make this change. Hopefully I don't break my code. Sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. But we can just do self.reviews because if you remember, we have a foreign key field here. We have a related name that's called reviews. So that should add an imaginary field right here called reviews. So I should have access to self.reviews.all. I think I need to do that. All right, we'll see if that works. If not, I'll revert back to what I know works, but always kind of iffy with my Django syntax. But I think self.reviews should be what I want. Let's just, I don't think I need all actually. We'll go with that. We'll see if that works. Okay, those are our models. Spent some good time on that. Hopefully a lot of that was review. Hopefully I wasn't too much time on it. Jake, question.
Yeah, I was just a little confused on where is it? If you can scroll down a little bit.
Sure.
Rating 56, I'm line 56, how you've got choices equals rating dot choices, but I don't see an actual like choices attribute, like a named attribute called choices in rating. How does it know that those are the choices?
Excellent question. That's something I did not mention here, but yes, this is again some behind the scenes magic. This is coming from this inheritance right here. So we're inheriting from something called models.integer choices, and that's what rating is inheriting from. So we take a dive into here. I have not done this before. Integer choices. Notice that integer choices inherits from the integer class and from something called choices. So we're just going to keep digging deeper. Control click, go to definition. So within our choices class, I bet there's a property called choices, or it might be in choices meta. Again, I've not done this. I'm not sure where it's stored. All right, I'm going to need to dig deeper. So the fun continues. Go into choices meta. And then where is it? It's got to be somewhere here. There it is. So there's a property called choices that we're accessing. So property is mostly like an attribute, even though it looks like a function. Just think of it as an attribute. So there's a dot choices, there's a dot names, there's a dot labels, there's dot values. This is all the stuff we're inheriting through the inheritance of integer choices. Again, there's multiple levels on here, right? We saw we had to dig like 3 levels deep to find exactly where choices come from, but that is just something being provided by the base class.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, good question. Sorry, I definitely glazed over that. Again, inheritance offers a lot. We don't necessarily know everything we have access to, but whatever kind of we want, we have access to. In this case, dot choices is a inherited property. All right, that was a lot of time on models, but good review. But this is what our models should look like. Again, definitely take some time to figure out what our model should look like. I spent some time ahead of time, so these I kind of just like, all right, yep, this is what I want. But usually it's not that quick when you're doing it yourself for a new project. But okay, so I think we're ready to go here. So we made our models. Always want to make sure once we're kind of good with our models, we need to make migrations. So with this in place, we're going to do Python manage.py. Don't know why this folder is open because I was digging in the Django code. We want to make migrations. So I'm going to type Python manage.py make migrations. Hit enter. All right, so notice it's going to give a summary. Yep, we're going to create 4 models. That looks appropriate to me. I'm going to migrate now. So I'm going to do Python manage.py migrate. So remember, we never did an initial migration. So Django has a bunch of stuff queued up that it wants to throw into our database. And we also have our own migrations that we just created here. So and run that. We got a huge list of items that Django did. All of this stuff is Django migrations I wanted to run. This is the only one down here that we added in to the mix. All right, so we made migrations. We migrated. There's a couple things we could do here. Usually once I create my models, I automatically just want to create a super user. So we migrated, so we should be able to create a super user to use the nice admin panel. So I'm going to do that. Just again, we don't have to, but makes it easier. So I'm going to do Python manage.py create super user, all one word. And this is me creating an administrative user for our system here. So I'm going to hit enter. Want to name that user. If I leave this blank, it'll default to my computer name. In this case, I'm going to name it admin, no email address, password, super secure, secret password. Yeah, I don't care about security. Cool. All right, so super user got created. That is step 1 of 3, I think. Step 2 is go to the admin.py file in our app, and we need to register which models we want access to from the admin. So in this case, I need to import from models. I'm going to do give me everything. So I'm going to do import star, which is say everything in the models module, give me access to here. And then we need to do admin.site.register. And then we have 4 models. So we had, what was it? Category, genre, products, and review. All right, so I'm going to save that. I guess that's step 1 and 2. I think that's all we had to do. Now I'm going to run my server again because I took it down. Python manage.py run server. All right, no errors. That means everything hopefully is good. Go back to my browser. Going to go to /admin. Let's log in. Admin super secret password. All right, so notice that we have our 4 models kind of listed here. Obviously, there's no data right now, but we could do that pretty easily through our admin panel. I'm not going to bore you with adding some C data, but we can add some manually here. I have some C data I have just to kind of make this a little quicker. But with that said, I think we've done enough to take a break. So again, we do have a long lecture. Want to make sure we're taking enough breaks. So are there any questions about anything we've done up until this point? Please ask, even if you're like, hey, this should have been reviewed, but I'm still fuzzy on it. Definitely ask. We want to make sure this is a good learning opportunity in case we forgot anything from our Djangoisms. Elon.
I have a question about that class, the integer choice you used. So will that be displayed out when we, like how are we supposed to see it when we run the website? Like what's the use of it?
Yeah, so good question. Again, there's a lot of functionality baked into integer choices, the class that we are inheriting from right here. The admin panel, again, will do it all for us. If we're creating our own front end, it's going to be a little bit more work because we have to figure out how to actually access the values. But the choices, again, we have values. We also have names that get extracted out here. So actually, if I go to add a review, I currently can't because I don't have a product. But let's go to reviews and try to add a review. Again, the admin panel is really nice because if I drop down rating, notice what I see in rating. These are the text values of my variables. I didn't have to map that over. I didn't have to create the string representation of my values, which is kind of weird, but also cool. So again, these are just variable names. Usually variable names have no impact outside your application, but the choices base class is able to know your variable name, convert it to a text value, and store that somewhere. And when we dug down, there's like a names property. It's storing that in the names and then somehow presents it on the front end, which is great. So again, I could just say, hey, whatever show I'm rating was average, put my username, write a comment if I want to, and hit save. And that will be translated to an integer value on the backside. So 1 through 5. Yep, a lot of nice Django features. Again, you guys can read up more about the choice fields. Again, Django has pretty good documentation, so again, we're not going to go in depth with anything here, but definitely a good, nice feature to use or nice model item to use here in the event that it makes sense.
So for the category, you could basically do the same thing. Is there a reason why you would choose one over the other?
So glad you asked that because I forgot to talk about that. Yeah, so that was one of the decisions that I had to make, and I kind of went back and forth. I was like, initially I didn't have a category class or category model. I didn't have a category field. I just had genres, products, and reviews, but I was like, hey, category makes sense. So then initially my thought was, well, why not just create a choices representation of category? And I could. So to be clear, there's more than one solution here. Because if you look at the category model, all it is a name, right? It's a type, it's a char field and a value. The value is the ID of the record, and then the name is the type field that I have here. So theoretically, I could kind of finagle this into a choices class just like this. But the one main differentiating reason that I kind of, again, this is about thinking about your project as a whole, is that I am never going to care about querying or serving up data based on rating type. So I'm never going to say, get me all the 5-star ratings for this product, as I'm not going to make an API call for that. However, I might make an API call and say, hey, give me every TV show in your database. So because of that, it makes more sense to have a separate model for things you might be requesting. Again, this can be solved without the category model, but for me, this was an important enough kind of object or resource to have its own database table and kind of be put on the side. Additionally, I wanted to have a foreign key relationship. I guess a foreign key in this case, I could have choices still. So, but again, yeah, you're right. I could use choices, but in this sense, in this case, I think category makes more sense to be a standalone model. I don't know if that was convincing enough for you, John, but I did think about it, and I was like, I went with this initially. I realized that's not going to be enough for what I want. Again, in this case, I could expand the category if I wanted to add like, last added dates. I could add more fields, not that I plan to, but this gives me a little more flexibility. Whereas my rating, I don't think I'm ever going to add anything more to it. I could add another value, but no other field, as in it's going to be a name and a value.
Ankur, I had a question about adding different fields to a class. Whenever you make migrations, doesn't it usually say like you have to provide a default or something?
Yes, go for it, Edgar.
Yeah, just could you go over that again, like how to add different fields to your model?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll do this one bit, and definitely we'll take a break after that. So let's kill our server. So Edgar's question is something that you guys may run into. I've run into it in the past. This is particularly when you add new fields after you run your initial migrations. So what Edgar is talking about is like, hey, let's say we go back to our product. Actually, let's go to category since I was talking about category. Let's say we want to add a new field. Let's just say description for our category, right? We've already made migrations once and migrated. Now I'm adding a new field. Anytime you change your model structure, you need to run make migrations again. So let's call it char field, I don't know, max one, 55, whatever. All right, I've added a new field. The problem here, it's not really a problem, but my database only has one record in it. So let's say my database already had some records in it. So let's say, I had category 1, which was TV shows. The only field I have is the type. So model 2 was movies, maybe, or record 2. All right, so let's say these are my existing category records. I've added a new field. When you go to migrate, the database needs to know what do we put into a new field? That is what the question marks represent here. So there are 2 options that we granted. Let's actually run this and see what happens. I'll do Python manage.py, make migrations. All right, so notice you get 2 options. It's saying provide a one-off default or abort this process and manually define a default. So it's saying, do you want to automatically insert some value? Let's just say 1. If I tell it, if I choose option 1 and say, I want my default to be 6, whatever. Or sorry, this is description. I don't know what I'm putting numbers for. Awesome shows, feature films. All right, so this is the description I'll put in. Maybe make these strings. All right, so 2 options here, and this is a bad example. The question marks is what I need to replace. So option 1 says, what do you want us to provide a one-time default and say, hey, this is blah, and every record is going to have a default, one-off default called blah, as in every record that existed right now will get this value that you specify from option 1. So if I put blah right here, this will be added to every existing field, and that's it. Option 2 is a little slightly different. This is saying you need to provide a default right here and then tell us, all right, if you want blah here, the difference here is that every existing field and every future field that does not provide a description will get this default value. So those are your two options that are being presented here. So in this case, I'm going to say I'll choose option 1, and the default value is going to be empty string. All right, so now it knows, all right, you want to add a new field? I know exactly what to put into that new field for any existing records. Does that cover that, Edgar?
Yeah, and usually, would you rather have like create a default in your model, or is it better to do it like the one-off? Like option 1 or option 2 better?
It depends.
Okay.
I know
And
that's
could
not
you
a
make
great
the
answer.
default none? Like if
Yep.
there isn't.
Yep, you could do default none. That's probably usually better in most cases, but it's up to you.
Okay.
If you actually want a default, like again, description default doesn't make sense. There's no default description that exists out there. So in that case, I'd provide a one-off default of empty string. But for other examples, like, you know, your release, maybe I want your release to be 2020 if they don't specify. Like that could make sense in some worlds. So whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, good questions there. All right,
And
I
then
do
what
not.
about? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do not want to run this migration. You can actually delete it. But next question.
Okay, so then what if you change it from car field to like text field or something?
Same.
Would you have to do the same thing?
You won't get this prompt. It knows how to convert between text field and char field most of the time, unless it needs to truncate data. But in that case, it won't prompt you how to replace the values. If you rename a field, read data type of field, that should be fine. It's only when you add new fields do you got to go through this process of specifying what exactly should go into those actual fields for any records that exist.
Okay, thank you.
All right, cool. Good questions. I think we're due for a break here. So it is 10:03. Let me pause recording.